All right, so we're talking about Hitler today, isn't that exciting? This is part one of World War II. It's sort of the beginning of the, if that makes any sense. And makes it nobody's on fire at home. Okay. Kiddo's getting teeth in, and she's being stubborn about actually having them screwed out, so she's basically crying all the time, so that's exciting. So, I just making certain that, Anyway. So, to start off, I want to kind of project to you guys one of the things I find that's pretty interesting about Adolf Hitler from a historical context. We as human beings really enjoy sensationalizing everything. We don't like to use simple words. It's like, how you doing? I'm fine. I'm good. I'm great. I'm ecstatic. I'm wonderful. We have to come up with all these other words to exaggerate how we are. When in truth, like, well, I'm here. We have to make things more exciting. And this is everyday life, mind you. When it comes to something that's monumental and world-changing, we go off the deep end with our exaggeration, our simplification, essentially. We tend to want to make Hitler into this almost fictional character, ignoring his humanity and just focusing on, all the terrible things that, quote unquote, he did. It's one of those things that we do because we are uncomfortable with the realization that Hitler was a human being and the decisions that he made and that his followers made ended up in the murder of around 6 million people. We don't want people like that to be human. We dehumanize these outliers. We do it with murderers, we do it with all kinds of terrible people, and we try to just really simplify the explanation for why they do the things they do. Oh, they're just crazy. Crazy people do anything. But that is disingenuous. People make decisions. And it is really uncomfortable when we start to shed light on who some of these people are. For instance, photographs of Adolf Hitler playing with puppy dogs. He loved dogs. Of him hanging out with orphans and trying to make them feel better. Of him showing human compassion. Because it stands that much more in contrast to the terrors that he and his party unleashed on the world. So that is one of the reasons why we will be spending some time looking at Hitler as a person and the situations that led up to the Holocaust and the Second World War. And first off, I'm going to start with the word Nazi. You guys know what a Nazi is? What does Nazi mean? It's not a soldier. It is an acronym, you're right. It specifically is a political party. It was the dominant political party in Germany during the 1930s and 40s. It just so happened to be the political party that Adolf Hitler joined after World War I. You see, Hitler, as a boy, loved nature. He, like many Germanic people, although technically he himself was Austrian, he was not German. But we'll get to that in a minute. He had this affinity for nature. And the thing is in Germany today, you can still see this. For instance, you guys know Lederhosen? You guys know what Lederhosen are? It's this like stereotypical German overalls with they're kind of like overall shorts that are made of leather. This Lederhosen means leather pants. They seem utterly ridiculous until you realize what they're actually made for. They're made for hiking. Specifically, going through nature where maybe the trails aren't so good, you've got all these kind of prickly vines and things in the way, because leather will deflect it from your body and not get you stuck by painful little barbs. And actually, the complete outfit actually has giant woolen socks that help to protect your legs and feet from the same thing. So it's outdoor equipment, going hiking and backpacking, that sort of thing. And it's a natural pastime. If you ask Mr. Householder, he'll tell you about how whenever he was in Germany, you have whole villages would meet out in a park on Saturday and they all go hiking together. The entire village is going to do this. So they're all about some nature. And this love of nature transitioned into his career as an artist. Hitler, his passion was for art. He actually attempted on numerous occasions to, I think it's 3 total, attend the Academy in Vienna of Arts. And he was an artist who specialized in nature painting. Give me a second, I'll show you some photos of him real quick. It's an easy Google search. Just kind of pop this open. Bring it over here so you guys can see. Painting. Oops, hang on. Yeah. That sounds like a store, paintings by Hitler, or like a scent. These are all examples. You can see the subject matter tends to be one of 2 things, either nature or architecture or both, because he had a fascination for both those. And you got to say Austria, Vienna has wonderful architecture, all these ancient buildings, so he was fond of drawing and things like that. And, I'm no art critic, I think I'm pretty darn good at the truth. But apparently he didn't get into the Austrian Academy on 3 separate occasions, but that didn't really deter him. He was also politically minded, and he was a nationalist. He really believed in the concept of Germany, not, in so much as just the culture, or just the country of Germany, which, if you might recall, wasn't that old at this point. It was set up by Otto von Bismarck, but it was also the German culture, which was shared by many different ethnic groups. And so, he also, like many other young lads, longed for adventure and excitement. In his book, Mein Kampf, which we'll talk about here in a minute, he writes about when he was a boy, he always wished that he could participate in some sort of global conflict, that there was some kind of war out there that he could be part of that would define a generation. What's scary is you'll hear people talk about that today. Man, I wish I was alive when X, so I could be part of X. People say about World War II, or people talk about the 1960s, the peace movement, the civil rights movement, all this kind of stuff. It's this envision we have of being part of it. But the thing of it is, that's not a historical concept of idea. That's a romanticized viewpoint of the war. It's this ideology behind it. And so he writes that he was very excited when World War I broke out, because then he could be part of it. So he ended up joining the army, and he was part of a Bavarian regiment where he served as a scout. Now, basically, the reason he was chosen as a scout is because he had taken horseback riding lessons. Basically, his family had some money. They weren't really wealthy, but they had enough money to get around. And they used that money to basically train him in what were considered like classical skills, and horseback riding was one of them. And so because he could ride a horse, they were used as scouts, because really, big cavalry charges weren't going to work in machine guns, so he used money outside of rifles and tried to keep them alive. So he was a scout. And while doing his duty, he ended up coming under attack by mustard gas, which blinded him. Now, he eventually healed to some extent, but his vision was never really that good afterwards. One of the things you'll see in a lot of photographs is this kind of stoic German figure with the mustache, that's what people tend to think about. But if you look at pictures of him behind closed doors, he's always wearing glasses. but wearing glasses was a sign of weakness, so he'd never appear in public wearing glasses. So it's kind of interesting stuff. So his vision was ruined, and basically he was like, my career as an artist is over. What am I going to do? So he was distraught in the hospital recovering, and at the end of the war, his life as a soldier was over. So now what? What is he going to do with himself? Well, let's look at his motivations up to this point. He's believes very strongly in Germany. He loves art and all this kind of stuff like that. Well, here's the thing is, after World War I, what happened to Germany's reputation? What did the Treaty of Versailles do to Germany? Blamed them for the war. It made them the laughing stock of Germany, really against everything he believed. So his friends were like, you feel so strong about this, become a politician. Get involved. Now let's talk about the political situation he's coming into. In 1919, the German government was replaced by the Weimar Republic, which, just like it sounds, it was a republic, elected officials. It was headed up by a chancellor. The problem, though, is that it had several political parties, like to the tune of 13 or 16. Now consider this. In order for a republic to function, you have to have the political parties willing to work together. Okay? How well have we succeeded that with two political parties in the United States in the past, say, 12 years, 14 or 12? Not so good, is it? We can't get the political parties to work together. We only have two of them. Try and get 16 to work together. You know what I'm saying? So what would happen is political parties would form blocks. A block was kind of an alliance between political parties and say, hey, we're going to vote together. So this allowed them to get various measures passed through the government, but this also meant that the government was really weak. It couldn't function properly. And one of the main reasons for this is there was no real strong chancellor. There wasn't someone who was able to kind of like knock heads together and wheel and deal and make the blocks work together. Everyone was kind of out for number one, and that caused everything to basically collapse. So there was a lack of strong leadership. And there was a lot of attempts to try to get people like Hindenburg or even Otto von Bismarck, who was like old as dirt by this point, to get back involved, but they couldn't get anybody. So there was a real big desire in Germany for one strong leader to kind of take things over and make everything work out. That's important for later. Let's look at the economic problem in 1923. The economy of Germany was disastrous in 1923. This is the beginnings and kind of what we're seeing happening with an international Great Depression. There was a lot of distrust in the economy. And frankly, this was caused and exacerbated a process of hyperinflation. Now, first of all, let's talk inflation. You guys know what inflation is as an economic concept. Not so much like a balloon inflation, but like, what is inflation? You guys know? Okay. Inflation is where money loses some of its value. Okay, it's a phenomenon where money loses some of its value. Now, you as a consumer, when you buy stuff, you experience inflation by prices going up. If the worth of money goes down, that means you need more of it to buy something. So in essence, prices go up. Okay? That's a simplified way of looking at it. With me so far. The easy way of looking at inflation is prices go up. That's not what it means, but for all practical purposes, that's how you experience it. Now, inflation is a naturally occurring process of a growing economy. Essentially, as a government prints more money, inflation happens, because as you print more money, it becomes worth less than it was. Now, to see this as a phenomenon, 100 years ago, what was the cost of, say, a gallon of milk? I'll tell you, it was about 25 cents, something like that, as opposed to $3 or $4 today. A house you can have a cheap one for about $2,000, you know, as opposed to like $80,000 or $90,000 today for a cheap house. You know, this is the effect of inflation that is more or less natural. Now, hyperinflation is that happening incredibly rapidly. So, for instance, let's say that 100-year period of inflation were to happen in one day. Or, to put it in other words, I'm not going to do the math, but a similar example. Whatever cash you have in your wallet right now, I'm not going to ask how many of you guys have cash because I don't care. But any money you have in your wallet right now, right? Let's say that for every dollar you have in your wallet right now, that's going to be worth 25 cents by noon, which is 5 or 6 minutes from now. What would you guys want to do? Yeah, buy something, right? Get rid of the money. If you're just going to lose value, might as well get your value out of it right now, right? Does that make sense? You're going to buy something that has tangible value. Maybe you'll invest in something that's more resistant to inflation, like gold or silver. Or maybe you'll just buy a bunch of like farm stuff with it and just try to live without money. I don't know. You've got a bunch of different options, I suppose. But when money starts to lose its value at such a rapid level, people stop wanting and stop trying, just try to get rid of it. And if you have a business, how's that going to work for you? You're going to be changing the prices constantly. I can tell you right now from experience working in retail, if you guys ever work in a retail store or grocery store or something like that, the most tedious and uninteresting job there is repricing. You simply have to go and change out stickers and change out the pricing labels for every product on the shelf. It sucks. And imagine having to do that for an entire store 3 times a day. Yeah, right? Might as well just close. What's that? Yeah.
How would you change it 3 times?
Because that's how quickly money's losing its value. You have to keep raising the prices if you're going to stay in business.
All the time?
All the time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, basically. You're not going to have much faith in the thing, so you're just going to close your business, you know? Whenever you take faith out of the economy, that's when it starts to shut down hard. The opposite of faith is also true, but that's not here or there. We'll get to that in a minute. So needless to say, the economy in Germany is in shambles. We're talking in some places, 50% of the population is unemployed. As bad as it was in the United States at the height of our last economic downturn, we only got to like 9% unemployment. Talk about how desperate people are for jobs, 9% unemployment, that's like 50. You can't run an economy on that. People are desperate. Economically speaking, things are pants. There's not a lot of faith in the government because it's inept. There's not a lot of faith in the economy because it's not, and everyone's feeling pretty angry and disillusioned with the world because everyone's blaming them for a war they didn't start. You can see maybe now why Hitler's message would be so readily accepted. Between 1919 and 1920, Hitler joins the NSGW, the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Now, in German, that actually translates to NAZI, or Nazi Party. And he actually becomes the leader of the party very quickly. Now, there's a few reasons for that. First, and probably largest, is he was a phenomenal public speaker. Say what you will about his message, his method of speaking was incredibly effective. If you watch a Hitler speech, which by the way we will, I want you guys to see this. One of the things he does a lot is he psychs up the crowd. He gets them excited. He plays to their emotions. Usually he begins with flattering the audience. You know, stuff like, I see before me a great people. I see before me a people who have fallen on hard times that have still managed to stand the test of time. And he's playing this up with his own manner, speaking that's filled with emotion. And so people, as they're watching, if they get excited, they start yelling, you know, Sieg Heil, which you guys have probably seen a lot, if you've ever seen anything with Hitler or the Nazis. Sieg Heil means victory yell in German. Victory, yell, victory, yell, victory. It sounds a little goofy. But the thing of it is, when people get excited, they will yell all kinds of stupid crap. Watch a professional athletic competition. Da-da-da-da, hey, da-da-da. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just used to get people excited, and then silence. They'll start talking again. They'll start leading up to this, raising the energy.
Sieg Heil! Everyone's excited and they're yelling and they're having a grand time and silence. And now this is the problem. And people are just like, yeah, and they're all psyched up and he's a great speaker. But the other thing is, a lot of the Nazi leadership thought that, hey, here's this young guy who's a good speaker. He's going to need advice. Let's get him in a position of power and we can manipulate him. Hitler was constantly underestimated by his opponents. He's able to become the head of state despite people wanting to not have him there because he's able to control the situation better. So in 1923, the Nazi Party attempts to take over the government. What's interesting is the government was meeting in a beer hall, which is a bar, and so he marches in with a gun and basically says, we're taking over the government. All these other Nazi guys come in, and then the police shut him down, throw him in jail. Because epic fail, right? And so Hitler goes to jail, and while he's in jail, he ends up writing a book called Mein Kampf. Now in it, he basically writes his political philosophies. For instance, that the Treaty of Versailles is completely a lie. It was based upon lies. It was deception, which it was from some point of view. Remember, he thought that Germans thought that they were going to be writing signing peace treaty based on 14 points, but that was not what happened. And so basically saying, we were deceived, and all these other terrible things that you guys have made us, it's all the fault of these other people. It's the fault of the French and the German, or in the English, and all these other folks. He also blames the Jews for a lot of deception. Specifically, he blames the Jews for being untrustworthy, that they would be in military units, they'd be the first to surrender, that they were always trying to manipulate the government, all these different types of things. It basically says if we got rid of the Jews in government, there'd be a lot less problems. And the thing of it is, people really wanted a scapegoat. They wanted someone to blame because that is human nature. We will blame just about anything or anyone else for our own mistakes if we can get away with it. Now, I've seen people blame inanimate objects. It's not my fault I was in a car wreck. My car just, did something wrong.
That's sometimes true.
True, but most of the time it's not. Most of the time we blame people for other things, for our mistakes, because we just don't want to accept that we are flawed. It's a hard thing to do to say, I screwed up. I knew I made a bad decision. It's on the truth. That's actually one of the signs of maturity, in fact, is that you can be like, okay, yeah, I made a mistake. But not everybody reaches that, you know what I'm saying? Just saying. And the thing of it is people are willing to accept this idea that, it's not our fault, it's someone else's fault, also because of nationalism. Jews were universally in Europe seen as not part of mainstream culture. And so if they are different, then they are not what is good, that makes them bad, and you can just run with this. Now, there's more to it in the book than Hating on Jews. There's actually quite a bit about history, and specifically this idea of Lebensraum. The idea is that the German people are impoverished now because parts of the nation were carved out and given to other foreign powers. To put this into perspective, this would be like if Wisconsin was suddenly given to Canada by the United Nations because they thought we don't deserve to have it. Now, Wisconsin is part of America. They're Americans. They identify as American. They speak English, American English. They're Americans. You can say they're Canadians all you want, but that's not true. This is what happened to Germany. Parts of Germany were just carved off and given to like France and given to other countries to basically keep as part of the new empire in order to weaken Germany. He was like, this is crap. Because of this, we're suffering. And he had a point. But Lebensraum, which means living space, was also going to be the excuse for invasion. We need to go invade this place because we need it to survive. Tie into this the idea of self-determination. Say, look, these guys are German. They want to be part of Germany. They are Germany. we're just trying to bring them back into nationalism. Didn't you say in your peace treaty that you wanted to have self-determination? Why are you trying to stop it? So it's going to be the excuse necessary to change quite a few things. We'll get to that. But regardless, all the stuff he's writing about really resonates with the German people. You know, he's talking about, you know, all your faults, all the things you're suffering, things that it's not your fault, and here's why. So it becomes a bestseller. Throughout Germany, people are reading it, and this is great. And so when he comes out of prison, he's hailed as a hero. And he's the one who's actually speaking out against the inept and corrupt Weimar Republic, and he's going to be the guy who is going to tell them how to work. So he's able to run for political office and wins. Really, I think I you can describe as landslide, I suppose. The position of chancellor. And so he does a number of important things as chancellor. First and foremost, he repudiates the Treaty of Versailles. We are not going to pay the reparations anymore. That's a huge economic boom right there, because now we're not losing tons of money to foreign countries. Now you might be asking yourself, what do the other countries of Europe do? Simply put, nothing. Because they can try to get involved with Germany, that's going to be another war, and they do not want another war. The League of Nations was created to try to prevent war in the first place. So there's really nothing they can do about it. Secondly, he organizes the government into a totalitarian state. Now let's explain what that means. Let's talk about it. A totalitarian state is a government that the rights of the government are more important than the rights of the citizens. The government exists as more important, and people are part of it. To put it in other words, in the U.S., all of its laws and all of its privileges are aimed at providing you all with the greatest balance of rights and security. We always are willing to sacrifice rights for security. Or rather, I should say, the one thing we're really willing to sacrifice our rights for is security, is feeling safe. Because if you think about it, the rights that we tend to give up, things like the right to privacy, or the right to remain free from searches, are being thrown out a window so that we can feel secure from terrorism and things like that. So in the case of Nazi Germany, what's going to happen is Hitler is going to create this totalitarian state, and the German people are going to be all about it because it means security. Remember, they wanted some strong leader to come and just make everybody work together. That's what he's doing. But it also means your difference of opinion is irrelevant. If you don't like the way things are going tough, if you speak out again, maybe you'll go to prison. Or worse. That's a totalitarian state. The rights of the individual are irrelevant. The rights of the state are what really matters. So one of the things he does with this newfound power is begin public works. Public works are building projects that are commissioned by the government. So like bridges, dams, roads, things like that. Now why is this significant? If you are in a depression and your economy is tense, one of the ways that you can try to get things going again is by having the government spend a lot of money. Either you can give this directly to people through, well, I forget the word for it, basically like a government like bonus, like everyone, hey, thanks for paying taxes, here's $2,000. Or you can commission these public works, and then you have to hire, contractors and laborers and all these individuals to build the things. You got to have folks making the steel. You got to have folks shipping, and you got to have folks assembling it and building the bridge. You can spend this money and employ a lot of people. Now, when these folks are getting this money in, they're spending it on goods such as food and housing and entertainment, all kinds of things like that. So those other markets, those other industries, are going to be having to produce more, they might have to hire more people. And so it's basically an injection of money directly into the government. This is how we got out of the Great Depression. By this influx of money, which is called Keynesian economics. The government goes into debt and spends money for the purpose of cycling more money into the economy. If this works well and the economy starts booming again, they're going to make that money back through taxes. So the idea is it's an investment. Does that make sense? That doesn't always work? No. There are instances where it doesn't. But this is the idea behind it. In this case, it absolutely does work, and the economy recovers. Germany becomes a success story again. And so if we stop there, and nothing else would continue, that was the story of Hitler right there. He would be known as one of the greatest politicians of the century. Yeah, he was bigoted, but he wasn't at that time, you know? And that's not where he stops. One of the things that you're going to see with Hitler and the Holocaust is it didn't all happen at once. You know, nowhere in Mein Kampf does it talk about how we should kill all the Jews, because that's crazy and psychotic, and no one would go for that. In fact, it's the small things that build up to the Holocaust that make it feasible. Once you're willing to accept something small and keep going, it can become a slippery slope. Now, that's a logical fallacy as well, but at the same time, we can see instances in history where people have been giving more and more and more, and then they lose their rights, or in this case, we get to a horror without even realizing that it's happening. This is a pretty good picture, I think, of Hitler. I believe this was the one where he was Man of the Year on Time magazine. And one of the things that people can look at is he looks sweaty and kind of unkempt and kind of gross looking. Not realizing that at the time, Hitler was considered very handsome. He was a guy that a lot of people looked up to in Germany, especially. And because of that, you know, a lot of people named their kids Adolf. You know, it's not until later that things start to really change. In 1935, we begin this process. Now, understand this. Hitler was blaming the Jews for a lot of Germany's problems. And so this created, essentially, the Jewish question. What are we going to do with the Jews? So Hitler's solution was, we'll remove them from power. Don't let any Jews be leaders in government. And then we're going to go even farther with this. In 1935, the government creates a set of laws that basically create Jews as a second-class citizen. Bans them from doing a number of different things. Limits how late they can be out on the streets, what type of businesses they can be part of. Even bans them outright from marrying someone who is of German blood. So there's a lot of specifics to the Nuremberg laws that prevent the Jews from doing a lot of freedoms. But this was nothing new. Jews have been made second-class citizens for centuries. Yes, many people disliked it. Yes, many people fled it. There was also a big campaign of identifying who were Jews, because this was another problem. What does it mean to be Jewish? That's a tricky question. On one hand, Jew means a practitioner of Judaism, Jewish faith. However, it can also mean a racial group from Eastern Europe, or ties with Eastern Europe. And so there's these little identificating armbands that put on Jews so people know, oh, you're a Jew. So we can apply these laws to you, things like that. And so we have solution one, remove them from power. However, there's still a great deal of distrust of Jews. This doesn't solve the problem. They're still around. They're still to blame for all these problems. And so, we get to the second solution. Deport them. Let's get them out of the country. And so basically, Jews are, you got to get out of the country. And so Hitler starts asking other countries, you want to take the Jews off our hands? And the answer is always no. United States, do you guys want all the Jews? No, we don't. He even offered to buy a bunch of ships to move Jews to England, and England said, no, we don't want the Jews. So now we're stuck. What are you going to do with all these Jews? Well, if we can't get rid of them, let's put them in one location so that we can keep an eye on them in case they try to do anything untrustworthy. What do we call a location where we're going to put one ethnic group, one group of people? In a city, we call it a ghetto. That's what a ghetto is. It's a location of one ethnic group. Whenever it's outside the city, it's just out in the middle of nowhere, it's camp, where we concentrate one ethnic group. Concentration camps. What is the purpose of a concentration camp? To put all groups of one people. That's it. That's the end of discussion. In the United States, during World War II, the United States had, as we had concentration camps of Japanese. We don't like to call them concentration camps. We created a new name for them. They're internment camps. They're places where you are interred. You know what another word for interred is? Buried. Forgotten. So we're putting these folks to ignore that they exist. Now, in the case of Germany, they're going to take this one step further and make them into work camps, where the purpose is, okay, we're going to take these Jews, we're going to put them here, and we're going to work them. Okay? All right, we're going to get some economic benefit out of it. The problem that we have happen here is you had camps built out in the middle of nowhere that really only had the supplies and staff and housing to hold like 10,000 people. Now let's say you're the leader of one of these camps. You've got 10,000 people, you're working, everything's great. You've got some small problems with disease that are spreading because of the cramped quarters, but it's manageable. Then you get a letter from the government saying, you've done such a good job with 10,000, we're going to give you 10,000 more, but we're not giving you any more supplies. What do you do? Simple solution is just double up. You know, take the food rations you're giving everybody and cut them in half. You know, you can do a little less dinner, it's all good. Just a little less food, just cut it in half. And then as far as space is concerned, yeah, it's going to be even more cramped, but it'll be fine. They get outside, it's no big deal. Now here's what happens. Your disease problem goes up quite a bit, because what helps you fight off a disease? Not being near other sick people and having good nutrition. We just took both of those away from you. So now the disease is going kind of more rampant. Now who is it that's most likely to die of disease? The very young and the very old. Yeah, they can be immunocompromised. Very good. So we have very young and very old that are dying. It's not that big a deal because these are the worst workers anyways. So they're dying, it's all good. The government says, great job, we're giving you 10,000 more. So now we're in a camp that can take 10,000 people, and we're going to have 30,000. What do we do now? Well, if we do the math, that means that we're going to have even more deaths due to disease and starvation. Really, we can't just cut more food even more. We're running out of stuff. People are just going to die en masse. That's no good. We need people to do work. So let's look at who does the best work. They get to live. Okay? Because they're going to live anyways. Look at the elderly and the very, very young. This is problematic because they're going to die anyways with this new disease. So let's just put them out of their misery. Let's just put them down. Right? Because they're going to die anyways. Why make them suffer? You know? The problem is we got to do this efficiently. We can't spend too many resources doing it, otherwise we'll run into trouble with our bosses. So we got to do this on the cheap. So there's a couple ways we can do that. One, I can line them all up. Everyone stand in single file line, take one bullet, and just try to shoot as many people as possible. That way I save money on bullets. The other option is, gas is pretty cheap. I'll just create a big furnace. I'll just throw people in it. Let's die, and it'll be all right. It's really efficient. I'll just have to have folks cart out the ashes every now and again. Be fine. How do we get from we don't like these people, they shouldn't be in a position of power, to we're killing everyone? Did I ever receive orders from the government saying, you must murder the Jews? Did I need to? See, this is important. People argue semantics here. You've probably heard there are individuals who claim the Holocaust never happened. If you haven't, newsflash. There are people who say the Holocaust never happened. They don't deny that there were any bodies. What they're arguing about is the word Holocaust. Holocaust means that people are being killed because the government orders it. They argue this never happened, and so it's not a Holocaust. It's not a genocide even. It's just mismanagements. I would argue it doesn't matter. People are still dead, and it's still the government's fault. Does the government have to order it to happen for it to have the same effect? No, absolutely not. If the government didn't want these people to die, they could have not shipped, millions and hundreds of people, where they wouldn't survive. This is the same argument about the Armenian genocide of, we're just moving people in the middle of the desert where there's no food or water. What do you think is going to happen? Yeah, right? So it's the same thing. That's the argument. You know what I'm saying? Now, here's the thing it is. The really horrifying thing, and I saw this on your faces as I was describing the furnace, is from a certain logical way of thinking, this makes perfect sense. If you're treating people like they're not people, if I was just telling you, look, I just got to burn a bunch of wood. I've had a storm come through, and all this wood got knocked out of trees. I got to get rid of it. Here are my options. I can bundle it up, which takes time and money, or I can just set them all on fire, which would you go for? What they would have set them on fire. All these 6 are people. To you, it's a logical jump. For some, it's not that big a deal, or they don't care. The message you would have to be taught for a long time that these are not really people and your actions don't matter is hard for us to grasp because we don't live in those times. But this is one of the things that was happening. People's lives were marginalized to the point it doesn't matter. That, or even you can see this doing no mercy, not so much the burning them alive thing, but keep in mind, that wasn't the only means of getting rid of the Jews. Think about the gas chambers. The idea that, they're just going to die painlessly, no big deal. Except the gas chambers and efficiency. We're talking efficiency. I want to kill as many people in as an efficient way as possible. Guys, if that doesn't send your evil bones tingling, I don't know what will. That is pretty much classic technical definition of evil. Now, we're not judging, we're not blaming blames because that's not what we do as historians, but noting, how do you get someone to do that? How hard would it be for me in the United States right now to convince a group of people that this was the right thing to do? Actually, they did a study with this. They did a study and found that around 60% of Americans electrocute them. Oh, the huge vanities. Where is the humanity? Very good question. First of all, we have to understand the concept of group mentality. People, when they are in groups, stop thinking as individuals. Look at the Baltimore riots just recently. What's that? I'm sorry, I still can't hear you.
What's that about?
what's the Baltimore thing about? Basically, it's a protest that got out of hand. People were protesting what they saw as an unjust death, and it got out of hand. And that's the important part. It got out of hand. How does it get out of hand? Like, how do you transition from, I'm mad about this happening, to, I'm going to go blast out all the windows of this Walgreens and go steal all the stuff inside? How do you transition to that? Let's take away accountability. If I were to say tomorrow you could break any law and nothing would stop, that you would be not punished, no one would stop. You do whatever you want. I love the murder. How many guys are like, right, I'm going to go murder a bunch of people? Probably not. I mean, probably not. Unless you found out that down the street was a child molester.
Yeah.
They can burn their house down. You know, things like that. Because they deserve it, right? They're not really human. They did a bad thing. That is the definition of the breakdown of the law. It's not about justice at that point, it's about revenge. As far as stealing crap, people do it all the time. You want to see a really great example of the inane, nasty, terrible nonsense people do whenever they won't be held accountable for their actions? Go play Xbox Live. Call of Duty. One of my sociology students did great experiments for her end-of-term experiment. What she did is she played Call of Duty with her brother, who was actually pretty good at the game. And what she wanted to see is how would people treat her if she was the one on the microphone. And what's funny is this, irregardless of that experiment, she also found that out of every kid's, like every other word other than swear words was Jew. You freaking Jew. Jew this, things like that. You know why I say that? Because there's a stereotype that Jews are cheap and they don't spend a lot of money. So saying someone's cheap that they're not playing the game fairly, oh, you're a Jew. And then they say, and there was one person who was like dominating this one game, like killing everybody. It's like, man, we might as well call him Hitler because he's killing all these Jews. Not to mention all the rape. No. It was modern warfare. It was American Civil War. And then all the racial slurs started coming out. The N-word was uttered just as frequently. Because, reasons. Take away someone's accountability, and they will do terrible things. I'd say, what's the big deal? They're just saying hate the words, things like that. Hate the words transition into more. It's not that hard to get people to do terrible things. All by taking away accountability. You can see all kinds of examples of group mentality. I'll never forget hearing about a prom where a girl was gang raped in the middle of the dance floor and no one did anything to stop it.
What?
Yep.
Multiple people?
Yes, like 19. 19 people.
Did they know what was happening?
Some did. They didn't speak up. Oh, yeah. You guys know what happens every day in this country? Someone will fall, suffering from cardiac arrest. Someone starts doing CPR and says, someone call 911, call 911. No one calls. He has to get there 4 hours later because the person's already dead. It's not my problem. I am not responsible if this person dies. Or, well, I thought someone else was going to call. So here's the way you handle it. I'll tell you right now how to solve this problem. Right? So if I'm doing CPR on this person, let's say you're the one doing CPR, you're doing CPR on this person. You say, you, call 911. What have I just done? I've singled you out. You're no longer part of the group. It's your responsibility. You don't call. Dude, I don't have a cell phone. Who's got a cell phone? Who's got a cell phone? I've got a cell phone. Yeah. Now we're bringing you out of the group. We're shaking this power that has on us. Example number 1. Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. The message goes like this, the story goes like this. Adolf Hitler is at a social function at a dinner, where he gets a notice that, hey, there's a German diplomat in Paris who just got assassinated. Okay, who's the suspect, things like that. Well, we think it was a Jewish assassin. So Hitler just says, all right, I'm going to finish the dinner, you just keep it under wraps for now. And so he starts doing this thing. And while he's kind of letting it happen, he's about to give an address to the political party. We'll probably watch the video, but not tomorrow. Guys?